Hi, Linda here. So this week I wanted to share an art journaling video with you. It's been a while since I've shared, even though I still create in my art journal, it's not something that I always record, but I will definitely try to make a habit of it because it's definitely fun to share the process. So here I'm just flipping through like old art journal pages, and you can go back to my art journaling playlist if you want to see some of those videos. And today I just wanted to play with patterned papers, just sort of doing something simple to sort of get out of a rut. And really just when there isn't anything necessarily specific that I have in mind to create, so I just want to go with the flow. And one of the easiest things to do is to start with writing. So free writing or stream of consciousness is really like good for the soul because you can just sort of write anything out, and obviously no one ever has to see this if you don't want to share it. Using it as sort of the background of your journaling page means that it's there, but it's probably going to be hidden behind a bunch of other stuff that you're going to add to your page eventually. So I find it to be a really open and free way to journal. So here I am just like writing really messy, not really paying attention obviously to punctuation or handwriting or any of that kind of stuff because it's really just for the background. And I'm writing all across the page here, sort of like line by line, but I know that people also write like random words or change the size or keep turning their journal like round and round, so the writing is like really random and all over the place, because I guess the point is you get to write it all out and get it out of your brain, but you don't necessarily want other people to read it or for it to be like noticeable after the fact. So it just sort of depends how you like to work, but you can do whatever you want. And of course you can also scribble over it, and like if actual words don't come out very well, I know a lot of people just scribble as well. It's really just like the act of creating and getting all that stuff out there. So I wrote all over my page, and then I just grabbed a bunch of papers and decided to cut them apart and collage. And I think that collage is one of those super easy ways to approach an art journaling page, because you have all the papers just ready already, and you don't really have to think about what you're creating. You literally can just collage squares and overlap them and not really have any sense to it if you don't want to. So I find it to be a very approachable way to create a page. In this case I'm doing triangle shapes, and I was thinking to sort of cover up the entire art journal page, or entire spread actually, with the collage paper, so it sort of covers up all the writing, but have little cracks of it peeking through, because I just sort of like the black and white line art kind of background. So I'm just spending my time cutting the pieces of paper now and sort of laying them in place to see how I can fit things together. And it's obviously not exact at all. You obviously can get really exact with it if you wanted to, and make sure that the spacing is more equal, across all of the pieces, but I'm really not really focusing on that at all, just sort of doing things randomly and doing my best to cover up the background as much as possible and fit pieces in together, but not really stressing too much over it at all. And it's really up to you, like whatever it is you enjoy doing or creating, whatever method it is that sort of jives with you the best, like that's what you should go with. I think sometimes we're very much concerned with rules and like what is the right way to do things, but when it comes to art journaling and really any kind of journaling or creation at all, there is no right way. You do whatever it is you want to do. You can even do it wrong, if you want to categorize it as wrong, it doesn't matter, it's just your creation. So I had grabbed a bunch of papers with sort of like the same sort of color scheme, like pinks and dark browns, sort of like that general feel. Then again, there's also greens and things. It's just a bunch of leftover papers that I had in my little box of papers. So they seem to go well together. So that's why I use this stack of papers. And as I'm looking at the page, I'm sort of trying to use pieces and patterns like not next to each other that are the same and sort of spread them apart and have like 3 or 4 of each pattern across the spread so that it just sort of looks a bit more mixed up and uniform. But there isn't really like any kind of formula or rhyme or reason. It's just random. And I think that when you let yourself create in this way, it's a lot more relaxing and just sort of enjoyable, especially if you're like new to art journaling, or if you're coming back from like a long trip or from like an absence in art journaling or a rut of some sort. It's nice to start with these types of techniques that are just really freeing, really open, really easy to do for anyone, no matter what your skill or what your level or what it is that you want to do. And so once I had all my pieces cut out, I just glued them all down. I'm using regular like white glue here. Here in Italy, we have something called Vinavil, but I'm pretty sure it's just the same as like Elmer's white glue or something similar to that. And I'm not really putting a lot of glue, just enough to get the paper to stick down since I'm gluing paper to paper. And this is all in my journal, so I'm not really worried about it necessarily falling out, because afterwards I can just close the book up and sort of like have that pressure for it to dry in that way and really stay in my book. Of course, if I had a glue stick, I probably would be using a glue stick because that's pretty easy for paper, but I've actually ran out entirely of glue sticks. I have to get more of that. So just using liquid glue and putting all those pieces together. And when I come across like a piece that maybe was too big or whatever, I like snip it and sort of fit it in, and just keep adding it in. And you can see that it's not very uniform, and the spaces in between are sort of like different, and sometimes more text shows up, sometimes less. If there was like a giant gap like right here, I'm just cutting another piece and adding it in to cover it up a little more, because I do want to cover up the entire spread with all these collage pieces of paper. There are also like patterns that I really like and papers that I really like that I just didn't use for other purposes, so I wanted to use them up rather than to just leave them in the box. So this is a nice way to sort of mix up a bunch of patterns and papers. So I glued everything down and gave it time to dry, and then I considered like gessoing over the whole thing with white to sort of lighten it up a bit, but then I didn't want to do that with like the paper, so I thought actually a good option would be to stick this whole page of vellum on top, so that sort of like lightens the whole background, so I can put this quote in, which is sort of what triggered this whole page to begin with. And basically that's my page. And I just glued the vellum in with white glue, like very loosely. Again, it's in a book form, so I'm not really afraid of it coming out. And I sort of like that it's sort of loose. People can sort of peek under, and you can like look back at the pattern papers. But the quote, this is exactly sort of what triggered this whole art journal page to begin with. And I sort of wanted to keep that in my art journal. And really, quotes are like one of my favorite things. It's just so amazing to have like a phrase or something that can mean so much. So I really like sort of keeping them in my art journals. So I hope you enjoyed watching this art journal process. Let me know down below what you like art journaling, or if you have favorite quotes to share. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel so you can get the new videos every single week. And I will be sharing more videos on art journaling, using printables and bookbinding, all that kind of good stuff. Thanks so much, and until next time.